Compassion and suffering. Are they also related? A compassionate response is associated with a willingness to suffer. Suffering can simply take us into ourself, but it can also take us beyond the self and so connect us with the other. It can take us beyond self preoccupations, self pity, and self justifications to what unites us in solidarity, to what links humanity. Some years ago, I read about one of the terrible moments in Bosnia. Michael Paul Gallagher described an incident. Allow me to read it to you. A number of Catholic religious sisters were raped by the Serb militia. One of them, Sister Lucia, wrote a letter to her superior expressing her torment and the painful decision to live religious life in order to give herself fully to being a mother of the child she was now expecting as a result of the rape. She had taken vows only a year before the night when these soldiers repeatedly abused her for hours. In her letter to her superior, she recalled how she had pious thoughts of offering herself as a martyr, but not like these. Her letter described not so much the horrible event itself, but rather the aftermath. Her total sense of shock at finding her imagined self destroyed. My trauma is not just the humiliation that I suffered as a woman, nor the unhealable wound to my religious consecration, but the difficulty with squaring what happened with my faith, of seeing it as somehow part the mysterious will of the one I considered as my divine spouse. Her letter ended with, I will go with my child. I don't know where, but God, who so suddenly broke my joy, will show me the road. My child, born from violence, will learn only love. Together, we will witness the greatest thing that a human being can do is to forgive. From the far end of the night, an essay in The Messenger, a publication of the Irish Jesuits, 1996. How can such a dawn of hope come from such a night of despair? Yet so often that is where hope is born when all is in despair. George Bernanos, the great French writer, once wrote, to meet hope, you must have gone beyond despair. When you go to the far end of the night, you meet another dawn. When you go to the far end of the night, you meet another dawn. We as a people are timid about bearing sorrow. Often we try to avoid the pain, which usually means being stuck in it. In an analgesic society, we are somehow afraid of pain. We tend to run away and flee from suffering rather than reach into it to find that which is greater than our immediate gratifications. We want to avoid distress, so we turn away from it in any way we can rather than feel it and try to understand what to do. Instead of allowing our pains to mold us into better persons, we run away. We need to discover something about facing pain. And amongst those who struggle, we find so many examples of the resilience of the human spirit. The Austrian existential therapist Viktor Frankl, that's a K not a C in the Victor, once wrote, "We who live in the concentration camps can remember the people who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a person except one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances, to choose one's own way." Hindi man natin kayang takasan yung mga konteksto ng buhay natin, kung paano tayo tutugon sa kontekstong iyon, kalayaan rin yun. At mahalaga rin yun. This link between compassion and suffering is highlighted in the writings of many authors that are familiar with desperation. Consider, for example, those who wrote about the Jewish Shoah or the Jewish Holocaust: Etty Hillesum, Elie Wiesel, or the difficult times in the Soviet Union and the Communist Europe: Anna Akhmatova, Arthur Koestler, or in the struggles of Latin America: John Sobrino, Jean Donovan, Leonardo Boff. Think about the stories of Cambodia and the killing fields, of Japan and the nuclear attacks, of EDSA. Reflect on the liberation struggles of Burma, Aung San Suu Kyi, South Africa, Nelson Mandela, Tibet, the Dalai Lama, India, Mahatma Gandhi, or appreciate the stories of Brian Keenan in Lebanon, Sheila Cassidy in Chile. Consider also the writings of Dorothy Day, Catholic worker, Dan Berrigan, Civil Disobedience, and Jean Vanier, Lark Communities. They find redemption in awkward situations. And it's not so much the events themselves, but what we make of them that matters. Doesn't matter if we have fallen, if we have made mistakes. What's more important is that we have stood up. How we respond to the reality gives rise to the heroism within all of us. And that is where you see the distinction between engagement and process, which leads to hope, and detachment, running away, and protest, which leads to despair. If you like this content, please, again, subscribe to the YouTube channel Samo't Sari sa Simula. Maraming salamat po.